Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today I want to talk about toys and action figures and a little bit about video games and comic books, but only tangentially as they are relevant to the story. So, a lot of you who watch my channel know that I had a second channel, Bree's Toys and Games, where I would show off action figures and toys from my private collection that I've built up over the past few years. And I've told various versions or pieces of these different stories relevant to each individual toy line. But I wanted to just go back and really dig into how I became a toy and action figure collector. And why I went from collecting comic books and video games and then action figures. Because they are sort of all in the same family. If you're a nerd like me and you're into science fiction and comics and, video games and such, toys are right there alongside. But it took me a while before I settled on which collections I wanted to really lock in. And so I'm gonna go back to the beginning and tell the whole timeline. So this is gonna be a longer video, but y'all seem to like the longer videos, so I hope you like this one. But I'm gonna start with a brief overview, because I got into video game collecting as a kid. I was obsessed with Nintendo. I had an Atari with, a little shoebox full of Atari games, just random shit you've never heard of, games that don't pop up on the collections, Yeah, there was Asteroids and, Q*bert and stuff like that, but I had weird stuff like Wizard of War and Flag Capture and shit like that. Enduro Racer, things that you're like, that's not Atari, and I'm like, well, actually, to me, that is. And then I was obsessed with Nintendo, but we didn't have a lot of money growing up. My parents didn't work good jobs when I was a kid, so it was rare for me to get video games. And the Nintendo was not mine. It was my parents bought it for the family one year for Christmas, and it was the only thing we got that year for Christmas. Like all of us, we had to share it. And so the Nintendo was not mine. Neither was the Atari. And the very first video game console I got that was mine was the Sega Genesis. I got it for my 12th birthday. I've done a whole video on that. I love Sega because of that. And so, leaving toys behind, little kid me was into Transformers and He-Man and G.I. Joe a little bit, and, Batman when the movie came out, and just random stuff. But leaving toys behind, I just, it was just, I had an Atari, I had an NES, I had a Genesis, so I would go to, the used rental stores and look at the used, the video rental stores, the mom and pop shops and the Hollywood Video and Blockbuster and whatever, to see what used video games they were selling in the clearance bin. And then if I saw video games at, a yard sale, a thrift store, or whatever, I would grab them. Toys, I was just sort of kind of on the tail end. I was still picking up, Generation 2 Transformers, and then I got all in on Star Wars Power of the Force in 95, which is a pivotal moment for me. I'll explain later. And then I just sort of, lost interest in toys because I was just, I wasn't collecting video games to collect video games. I wanted to play video games. And I just wanted more games to play, because back then, video games were short. They were much shorter back then than they are today. Those NES games, even a long NES game, once you get good at it, you can beat the whole thing in 15 minutes. So they got tremendous replay value because they're, coming off of the arcade mindset of game design, where you just got to make the game super hard, so that you just keep playing it so you don't feel like you're getting robbed, because there's only 6 levels. And And then I got a PlayStation, an N64, a Super Nintendo, and I was just buying games for those because like I had them. By the early 2000s, I got a GameCube, a GBA, and then that's when I went back and started looking for the stuff that I missed out on. I got a Game Boy. I think I had a GBA, and then I got a Game Boy Color, and then I got a Sega Nomad, a 32X, Sega CD, and then a Sega Saturn, and then I went all in on collecting video games. But 2001 was also when Transformers had their first big comeback. Beast Wars was like a blip. It was real popular and burned hot and bright for like a minute, and then Beast Machines pissed on that fire and put it out real quick. But Car Robots 2001 Transformers was like a pivotal moment because like there was even a story in like I think the New York Times that Transformers were back. Like it was a headline. It might have been one of the other newspapers, but it was like a big deal because Transformers had kind of had a bumpy time in the 90s. All action figures really did. It was all Star Wars at that time, and Micro Machines, and Power Rangers. So if you weren't into those three toys, well, you were SOL, or you just didn't buy toys. Because, Ninja Turtles had ran its course. Ghostbusters had ran its course. G.I. Joe had ran its course. He-Man had ran its course. You know what I mean? So there was no culture in retail or among the toy fans of bringing toys lines back to life. Once the toy line ran its course, the toy companies were looking for the next big thing. They weren't interested in bringing old stuff back. But I started just like picking up those 2001 Transformers, the robots in disguise. And I emphasize car robots when I talk about robots in disguise because I know there's a separate toy line years later also called Robots in Disguise. But the tagline of the original Transformers was More Than Meets the Eye, and the tagline on Generation 2 Transformers was Robots in Disguise. So when you say robots in disguise, well, that's what they are. So I have to be specific. And I went all in collecting Transformers for like about 4 years. I got some alternators, I got a bunch of Heroes of Cybertron, I picked up a bunch of old G1 toys, G2 toys. I skipped over all the B stuff except for what was integrated into I'll just say car robots. Like the Predacons that made their way into car robots, the 3-pack and stuff like that. I never got the Shark. Always wanted the Shark, never got it, never found him in stores. And then I bought except for the Shark and the 3 Trains, I had every single toy released in that toy line. Like I went and bought all the duplicates and re-releases and variants of the little cars, the Spy Changers, and the repaints of the action figures. I was all in. And then, I jumped in, or let me rephrase that. I sort of dipped in with Armada because I was still like, the fire was there. I was like, oh, I love Transformers. But, like, not action figures. I was like, well, these aren't toys. These are robots. These are these are like puzzle pieces, that I was, trying to convince myself, because I was an adult at that time, that it was okay to buy Transformers. But I wasn't going to go back and buy, like, Batman figures or Ninja Turtles, because that was kid stuff, and I had outgrown it. I was already collecting video games at that time. And then, by the time the Unicron trilogy ended, you had Armada, Energon, Cybertron. I bought like a couple of Energon toys and never even bothered with Cybertron. I was just like over it. I was like, okay, I got all the Transformers I want. I'm good. I don't need any more. And I'm not buying other toys. I refocused my attention on picking up a bunch of comic books because throughout the whole time I never stopped buying comic books because comic books are cheap. And then I slowly started going back and forth between, I'd get bit by the bug, oh, I want to collect a bunch of DVDs, and then I would buy every movie I could on DVD. And then I would be like, I don't mind, why am I buying movies on DVD when I've got Netflix? So I would sell all my DVDs and then take that money and then go buy a bunch of video games. And then I would be like, why am I buying video games when I have emulators on the laptop? And then I would sell all my video games. So I kind of went back and forth. And then I would, watch an Angry Video Game Nerd or a Pat the NES Punk or something, and I'd get bit by the bug. And I'd be like, oh no, I want to go back and collect NES. And once you start buying NES, that leads you to SNES, that leads you to Genesis, and then you're right back in the thick of it. But then, ups and downs financially, I would get on hard times and sell all my stuff, etc. And I only kept a handful. Again, I used a shoebox as like a reference point. It was a literal shoebox of just a handful of the most important Transformers to me, because I sold my entire collection that I had amassed, and I kept like a Bumblebee, I kept a couple of GoBots, even though they weren't technically Transformers, they're still transforming robot toys, and I had GoBots as a kid, and I watched the cartoons, so they're relevant, and a handful of others, just like a handful of the personally important ones that had sentimental value to me. And then in about 2019, I think it was, had been watching a bunch of at the time it was Toy Galaxy, now it's Secret Galaxy, YouTube videos, and learning the history of these things. I discovered Pixel Dan, Matt Mercer. I was watching the history of these toy lines, and a few other channels. I'm not going to name them all. And at that time, I had a pretty good paying job. I owned my own house, and I was financially stable, so I decided, you know what, I'll just pick up a few, toys from my childhood. Just the ones, again, that had sentimental value. Pick up the Transformers that I remembered having. I'll grab some of the Masters of the Universe I had, the G.I. Joes, the Mortal Kombat figures, the Ninja Turtles, and then maybe grab a couple of ancillary toys along the way, just, to puff those ones up. The ones that, go, if I'm going to get a Skeletor, I might as well get a Beastman, even though I never had a Beastman as a kid. I did have Skeletor, so might as well. Things like that. And then, this was around the time that I discovered two toy lines that were brand new at the time. Rise of TMNT and the 50th anniversary Walmart exclusive Scooby-Doo toy line. Scooby-Doo. Where are you? So I bought every Scooby-Doo toy in the toy line, all the 2-packs. You would get one of the Mystery Inc. characters, and they came bundled with a monster, an iconic monster, and then there was the van, the Mystery Machine. I bought the entire toy line, and then I just went nuts with Rise of the TMNT, because I decided, well, I don't want to collect the vintage toys because they're probably too expensive. I didn't have a lot of them as a kid, so this will stand in for my TMNT fix. And then I just sort of snowballed from there. But I want to go back to the very beginning. How did I get into toys in the first place? Well, obviously, a kid in the 80s, yeah, every cartoon on television is just a glorified toy commercial. So, back in the 80s, it's real easy to get caught up in the action figure craze. And I was susceptible to this to a smaller degree than most people, because like I said, I was more into Nintendo. So yeah, I wanted Transformers, and I wanted a couple of I got some Ninja Turtles, and a couple of the Batman toys from the Tim Burton movie, and then I got some, some random G.I. Joes and stuff, but I was never, asking my parents for toys. I was asking them for Nintendo games. But because I was a kid, they would buy me toys anyways, action figures, because, it's what I was into. I mean, it's what kids, it was cheaper, They could get me, 5 action figures for the price of 1 Nintendo game, so they felt that was a more economic choice. Because the Nintendo didn't belong to me, so it didn't make sense to buy the game I wanted. They wanted to get a game. Whenever they bought a Nintendo game, they tried to get one that would appeal to all of them. All of us. My parents, myself, and my sisters. because it was for the family, so it wasn't just my system. So they were like, nah, we're not going to get the game you want. We're going to get a game that everybody's going to enjoy. So we're going to get, like, The Three Stooges, because Dad likes The Three Stooges. So he bought The Three Stooges video game. And we liked the movie Total Recall, so we got the Total Recall video game and stuff like that. So it was like, oh, ugh, okay. But it was whatever. And then, so, in the early days, I was just getting action figures, just like birthdays, Christmas, and then just throughout the year. But I was really honed in on Transformers. I was obsessed, and video games. But because video games were more, and I would pick up comic books just like, I'm at the 7-Eleven. Hey, they got a comic book rack. I'm gonna grab a couple of them off the shelf. Grab a couple comic books, a big gulp, and a Twinkie, and I'm good to go. And so I amassed comic books along the way, but that was just like something to read. I never followed comics. I never paid attention to comics. I was just like, oh, here's a, I don't know, like Codename, whatever it was called. Or here's a random Ultraverse comic, or here's a random Malibu comic, or here's a random Spider-Man comic, or an Archie comic. I didn't care. I just wanted something. I just grabbed them randomly. I wasn't paying attention to the story or the characters. I was just sort of flipping through the book. I wasn't even reading them. I was just flipping through the book, looking at the art, looking at the ads, usually looking for ads for video games because there was no internet really to speak of back then. I didn't have a computer, so I wouldn't have mattered. So I was just looking for what video games existed, so I knew what to look out for when I went to like the thrift stores and the pawn shops and flea markets and yard sales, etc. So I had an idea what was out there because there was no databases or anything like that yet. There was no Wikipedia articles or anything. Those things didn't exist. We didn't even have a concept. There were magazines that you could buy that had lists in them and stuff like that, collector's guides and such. But I wasn't spending my money on those. Any magazine I bought was just Electronic Gaming Monthly or Sega Visions because I just wanted to read about video games. Because sometimes just looking at the pictures and reading the review was good enough to hold me over until I could get a game. And I didn't get every game that was in the magazines. I wanted every game that was in the magazines. I didn't care what the reviewer said. If the pictures made it look good, I was like, I want it. And back then, I was a lot more open-ended in my video game interests. It was very rare that I would find a video game I didn't like. I still enjoyed that Total Recall game. I still played that Friday the 13th NES game. I still had fun playing the Three Stooges game. I didn't have a concept of, this is a bad game. Ugh, I don't want to play this. I was just like, hey, it's a video game. I'll play it, get bored, and play something else. I just wanted as many games as I could, so I never got bored. And then, in the early 90s, Generation 2 Transformers came out. And so I picked up a few of those because, again, I was really into Transformers. But I had already gotten all of the Ninja Turtles I wanted. And I ended up getting one Power Ranger action figure. It was the Green Ranger auto-morphing, head-flipping, push the button and his head flips over. And then I got, like, the actual little role-play power morpher so that me and my friends could play Power Rangers in the backyard. And go, pterodactyl, or whatever the dinosaur was that we were representing the color of the Ranger we wanted to play. I always picked the Pink Ranger because somebody had to be Pink Ranger. And, one friend was the Red Ranger, another friend was the Blue Ranger, etc. And I was like, I'll be the Pink Ranger. And so we would always play Power Rangers. Like role play in the backyard, just pretend play Power Rangers. So I was still watching Power Rangers. I was watching Power Rangers on TV. I was watching MTV a lot. Not the animated stuff, the music videos and music related stuff, because I was obsessed with music at the time. I still am. That's another story for another day. And then because I was already like amassing a big collection of mixtapes at the time, and eventually I would go in all in on CDs. At one point in time, I had 1,200 CDs in my collection. These are not mine, but that's just a visual aid. But I had more than that. at one point in time. Got rid of them all, but that's another story for another day. And then in the 90s, I get into high school, and most of high school is spent, just like trying to make music and learn, getting good at breakdancing and stuff like that. Because I was into rap music at the time, and all of my friends were. I lived in a town in Nevada. All my friends were either Hispanic or black, so I was the only white kid in my social group. So it was really easy to get into hip-hop and rap music and that kind of stuff. But just before that, Transformers Generation 2 was winding down. 95, 96 was the lead-up to Beast Wars. I was not interested in Beast Wars at all. I was grossed out by it, like literally disgusted. I was like, this is disgusting. This is offensive to my eyes. They're furry robots, and that's you. Why would you want fur on a robot? I want fucking metal. Give me metal. It was offensive to my sensibilities. Still is. I hate Beast Wars. Never got into Beast Wars. Not even the goddamn cartoon. I don't like cartoons, so fuck off. The cartoon is better. I don't give a fuck. It's a cartoon. Go watch your goddamn kids' fucking breakfast cereal Saturday morning toy commercial and leave me alone. But anyways, 1995 rolls around, and I like everybody, I was into Star Wars in the 80s when it was like the cool thing to be into. But like I was born in 82, so it was fading away when I was like getting into school, like actual elementary. Other kids had already lost interest or were losing interest in Star Wars. I never lost interest in Star Wars. But there were no new toys coming out. From like 86, 87 until 95, there were no new Star Wars toys. Like none. So, I had, dabbled in like Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles and a few other things, picked up some Mortal Kombat action figures because I'm obsessed with video games, and hey, it's a video game toy line, why not? Would have bought anything Nintendo put out Mario related, but they never did. Not outside those Happy Meal toys, which I had every single one of them because I was obsessed. And then in 1995, I just, I was in a toy store and I discovered the Power of the Force toys. And so I picked up a bunch of Power of the Force toys. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Chewbacca, R2-D2, C-3PO. Just grabbed a bunch of them. I didn't get all of them, but I grabbed a bunch of them. And I got the AT-ST, the Imperial Walker, the Scout Walker. And just had a bunch of Star Wars toys. Just sort of as an aside. I was like, oh, I love Star Wars. I want some of the action figures. And then in 2001, like I said, I got into Car Robots, the Robots in Disguise toy line, the 2001 Transformers. And was still collecting Star Wars, like the new figures from the new movies as they came out, like Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme and Darth Maul and whatnot, because I was into the movies. I like the prequels. Eat shit. They're good movies. Fuck off. But I was really into the Star Wars. And I was also I'll never stop going to the movies, but I was really into sci-fi, so I was watching X-Men movies because obviously I like X-Men. Spider-Man, The Matrix. Sat through those atrocious Lord of the Rings movies. They're dumb as fuck. Get over it. They're not good movies. The prequel Star Wars are better. Fight me. But don't actually fight me because I'm right and you're wrong. But, never got into the Lord of the Rings. Stupid fucking franchise. Stupid fucking premise. I'm gonna go on a walk to a mountain to throw a ring in the Ring of Fire for 12 hours. God damn it, go to hell. Boring ass movie, go to hell. Not into Lord of the Rings. Don't talk to me about Lord of the Rings, it's stupid. But Star Wars ran its course, the prequels came and went, and then, you know, the sci-fi movies were still coming and going, but I had lost interest in the action figures, you know. I was just like, okay, you know, video games come and go. Comic books, I never stopped buying. DVDs come and go. Things like that. And like I said, I started collecting Rise of the TMNT in, I think it was 2019, in those Walmart Scooby-Doo toys. And then the pandemic hit. And so I'm stuck at home like everybody else. With like one shelf, little bookshelf that I dedicated. I was like, I'm going to fill this bookshelf with toys and that's it. So I was like being very selective of what toys I wanted. You know, very specific G.I. Joes, very specific He-Mans, etc. And this was also the time that the Masters of the Universe Origins line came out, Revelations came out. This was in the thick of the War for Cybertron trilogy, Siege, Kingdom, Earthrise. Skipped over Kingdom because, like I said, not into Beast shit. But got really heavy into collecting the War for Cybertron stuff. And that led me back to the G1 toys, the G2 toys, the Robots in Disguise toys. And in that, I started grabbing some of the old TMNT toys from my childhood, the actual vintage toys. And again, my goal was to just buy back the stuff I had as a kid, and then maybe some like ancillary stuff that like went along with it, like I said. But then, you know, as the pandemic dragged on, I just sort of had to sell all my video games because I lost my job. You know, COVID was a dark time for people in the news business because there were layoffs everywhere. So I lost my house, had to sell all my video games. Just was not making ends meet. But I got back to a friend took me in, let me live with her for a while till I got on my feet, got a job, back to work again, making money. And that's when I started collecting toys again. Now, what drew me back to action figures was not an appreciation for a good action figure. It was, I love science fiction, I love horror, I love fantasy, but not Lord of the Rings. Good fantasy, not Lord of the Rings. You know, Labyrinth, Willow, Legend, other stuff. Conan the Barbarian. Good fantasy, not Lord of the Rings. And then Marvel stuff. So I got really into, like, just characters. You know, I wanted characters. You know, the DC characters, the Marvel characters, video game characters. So I started collecting action figures based on that. Had no real concept of, oh, does this figure have X number of points of articulation, or is it a good sculpt, or anything. Didn't care. Still to this day, I don't care. I would rather have a vintage Batman piece of plastic from the Kenner line from 1989 than a DC Legends Batman, because I don't need a 6-inch figure made out of rubber that has 27 points of articulation. I'm not interested in that. I just want a fucking Batman to put on the shelf. You know, or put in a shoebox or a tote that I can pull out and, you know, just, you know, do voices and pretend. So then I was really into wrestling at the time. So I started buying wrestling action figures because, again, it was just, oh, I like Hulk Hogan. I'll get a Hulk Hogan action figure. I like Nikki Cross. I'll get a Nikki Cross action figure. Bray Wyatt, etc., etc. Not really trying to collect anything. It was just, there was never my intention to become a toy collector. My intention was to just, you know, fill that toy shelf and then kind of go back to collecting electronics and video games and DVDs. Well, you know, in the streaming era, with, like, you know, all the free stuff like Tubi and fucking Pluto and all this other stuff, it's like, well, I'm not paying for streaming services, but I have all the movies I want. I've got YouTube, I've got all this other stuff. There's no reason for me to be spending money and taking up space on DVDs. So I sold my DVDs, got rid of them. Same thing with my CDs. And I was like, okay, now I got some extra money at the time. Let's just see what else there is for action figures. And that's when I became an action figure collector. So I didn't follow the same path as everybody else. From the 80s, I had all these toys as a kid, went from, Star Wars to He-Man to Ninja Turtles, and then back to Star Wars, and then, just became obsessed from there. That's not what happened with me. I dabbled. I had interest in some of these. Never had any, Street Sharks or Skeleton Warriors or anything like that. No interest in it. Even to this day, I have one Skeleton Warrior action figure. Don't even know his name. Don't own a single Street Shark, but don't have any interest in them either. And starting in 2015, which this is relevant, I have another YouTube channel, and I talk about this a lot. I became obsessed. Probably to an unhealthy point, but it doesn't matter. Obsessed with Minecraft. I had Minecraft on the PS3. I had Console Edition on the PS4, and then later Bedrock Edition. I had Windows 10 Edition on my laptop, Java, and then later Bedrock. I had Bedrock on my phone and my tablet. And then I had it on the Wii U and the Nintendo Switch. And then Minecraft, Story Mode. And then, of course, I saw the movie in theaters, bought a couple of toys from the movie. Lots of Minecraft stuff. Really obsessed with Minecraft. And so I started buying Minecraft toys and figures and play sets. And Minecraft Lego stuff, because Minecraft and Lego, they're like the same fucking thing. Although I was never really into Lego, but that's another video for another day. I'll talk about it, but not today, because it's not really an action figure. Well, YouTube thinks it is, but YouTube is stupid sometimes. The AI bots that run the YouTube algorithm are dumb. But I started to realize that it wasn't just reconnecting with my childhood, because I didn't have a lot of toys as a kid. I had a lot of video games and comic books. But there were video games that have famous video game characters. I thought, okay, I'll see if there's action figures of them. I love horror movies, so I started collecting NECA stuff, the horror figures, Gremlins, Freddy Krueger, Friday the 13th, Pinhead, Ghostface, Pennywise, etc. Just building up a massive collection of horror action figures and collectibles. And obviously, earlier this year, back in May, I got really sick from COVID, and my health issues had been piling up. Mental health issues like bipolar, BPD, CPTSD, a few others. And then physical issues like, GERD and gastroparesis and my broken foot that's not going to heal, carpal tunnel, colitis, and a few other issues that they're still investigating, arthritis, neuropathy. My body just decided it's too weak. I don't have any physical energy. And I got real sick and I lost my job because I had to take some time off for health reasons. And then I had to apply for disability because I just can't work anymore. And so I'm still waiting for my disability hearing. But because that happened, I don't have money anymore. And so my toy collecting has come to an end. I'm not buying new stuff. I'm not asking friends for stuff. I'm just like, hey, can I get help with some groceries? Or maybe, my microwave is getting a little old. I need a new one. Things like that. Not really focused on toys anymore. Now, all throughout this time, I started expanding from action figures to, like, you know, Care Bears, because I had some of those as a kid, Rainbow Bright, Barbie, some other stuff. You know, I got some Monster High dolls, some Disney Princesses dolls, and then I got a bunch of Hot Wheels, Johnny Lightning, Micro Machines, Matchbox, and then a few random other die-cast cars here and there. And then I got some, like, a bunch of Legos along the way, by way of starting with Minecraft Legos and then branching out from there. Mostly Lego City stuff. I'm not interested in the other stuff. Just Lego City and Minecraft. Those are the only two Legos. I'll buy a Lego set if it's from Lego City or Minecraft. Nothing else. Not even the Nintendo stuff. Not interested. Not really that interested in Lego to begin with. But, you know, it's cool. And then, because I didn't have a lot of money while I was collecting, you know, I'm buying used action figures on eBay that are usually not in the best shape. Or I'm buying, like, the new stuff that's on the shelf and then opening it up and taking it home and playing with it. So there's not a lot of pieces in my collection that have any resale value. If I sold my entire collection to a collector, I could probably get $1,200 for everything. And then that money would be gone and I would be out my collection. If I sold to a dealer, I'd get like $300 and I'd be out everything and that money would be gone within a week. So I don't have anything that has any significant resale value, but I'm not buying anything new, but I don't want to get rid of the stuff I have. I don't want to add to it. My toy collection is done, which is one of the reasons why I stopped making videos for the toy channel, because I'm not getting new toys, and that's just a decision, you know. And even if I get, like, my disability approved or win the lottery or a millionaire donates me money or whatever, because none of these things are going to happen, but, well, maybe the disability, or I, you know, end up finding a job I can do from home that's, you know, I can do that's not going to, you know, cause issues with my health problems. If that ever happens, then I'm still not going to go back to buying toys again. My toy collecting days are done. Now, I'm not going to get rid of what I have, like I did in the past. You know, I bought a bunch of comic books and then got rid of them, trading cards and then got rid of them, etc. I'm not doing that. I'm keeping the toys I have. Everything else I got rid of. I've already got rid of the video games. I have a PS4 that I play Minecraft on, and I have a laptop I play Minecraft on, and that's it. That's the video game I play, Minecraft. And that's it. And that's where I am. This video didn't run as long as I thought it would. Stay cool.